it's not worth the thought. Now, a number of people joining the webinar and fastly joined the webinar. Don't worry, we haven't started early. We're just chatting amongst fellow friends and delegates. We accidentally switched, or I accidentally switched on the button opening the webinar. So that's why you can all hear us. There was a vast number of you that arrived with your breakfast, or maybe you had breakfast already. So a very, very warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Great to welcome you to this webinar, Portugal Unlocked. We've still got 5 minutes before we officially start the webinar. The reason I'm starting a little early in terms of saying hello to you is that as of yesterday, we had 920 registered to attend the Portugal Unlocked seminar, which is testament to our appreciation for your attendance. But that's a sovereign world record, not that I'm counting, but thank you all for registering. And you're coming in like, I can see on my screen, you're coming in like the by-election for Rochester or something. It's really good to see. I'm from Leicestershire. Anyway, thank you for your attendance, and we'll be starting on time. What you see is in front of you is there's no deliberate and delivered PowerPoint today. It's just 3 or 4 pages just to keep the speakers in focus, and a guide to tell you what's to be delivered by all speakers. And this 3 to 4 page presentation is not a presentation, it's an aid memoir. And on the last page will have the contact details, second page will have the contents, the third page will have the speakers and some notes. But the webinar is designed to give 50% of topical, factual, updated information and 50% open questions. So it's more about the delegates, rightly so, and the questions and cantering through the questions as opposed to just listening to a preordained presentation, hoping it works. So that's a refreshing change, I think. So a couple of minutes before we officially invite you or officially welcome you all to Portugal Unlocked. I'm your chairman today, just for the day, and I'm Simon Denton, Managing Director of our London-based subsidiaries. My colleague Shelley, member of the Portuguese delegation of Sovereign Consultoria, member subsidiaries of our global group. Special guest speakers, Christina, Pippisley and Bruce. I can't see Bruce for the moment.
Bruce temporarily disappeared. Oh, there he is.
You worried us then.
Bruce.
From our site. Bruce Hawker, a director in Fine and Country, but I'll give the official Fine and Country Algarve. I'll give you the official introduction in a minute. There's already a ton of questions coming in. Thanks to behind the scenes, Tiffany, Jess and Miguel. They're fielding the questions on my left-hand screen, or sorry, right-hand screen. And thank you for all of your questions so far, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll be getting through as many of those questions as possible. But those questions that are not answered, they will be answered on an email. So again, thank you very, very much for the questions. And we've still got hundreds coming in at the moment, so thank you again for your attendance. We're starting in a couple of minutes, so I'll just come back to you in a couple of minutes' time, if I may. once again a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this webinar, Portugal Unlocked, a record turnout, so thank you all for registering over the last few weeks. Very kind. We had 920 registered as of this time yesterday, and we've just got dozens more, tens at a time coming in. So I'll give a slow introduction because it's actually 9 o'clock. So again, official welcome. I'm your chairman. I'm the managing director of the London-based subsidiaries of the Sovereign Group. Speakers with me, ladies and gentlemen, Christina Hippisley, the general manager, Portuguese Chamber of Commerce for the UK, based in London. Bruce Hawker from Portugal. He's lived in Portugal 40 years, ladies and gentlemen. Must have gone there as a baby. Bruce Hawker, director of Fine and Country Algarve, and my honourable colleague, Shelley Ren, a head officer of Sovereign Consultoria Limitada, which is based in our member Algarvian office in Portugal, probably one of the oldest subsidiaries of our 34-year history. So that there you have the speakers. This event is being recorded, and so a link to the recording will be provided to you, as well as this sort of aid memoir that you've got in front of you. It's not there's no PowerPoint presentations. It's 30 minutes of topical news, followed by 30 minutes of questions. We'll probably get to 10 minutes of questions to answer the questions we've already had from you before today, ladies and gentlemen. Now, as an intro, there's a population of Portugal today stands at 10.2 million. There's 500,000 expatriates, ladies and gentlemen, residing in Portugal, and it's because of that Portugal was voted the 3rd best country to receive expatriates. Not a poll that I wrote, but an official poll voted the 3rd best country. In the Global Peace Index, that's Peace Index, didn't know one existed, but so it should. Portugal is considered as the 3rd safest country in the world. Don't ask me who the first and second one is, but 3rd is Portugal. Clearly, and we all know this, there's 300 days of sunshine in Portugal per year. There's one in the UK at the moment, but hottest day of the year so far. One of the lowest cost of living nations in the EU. Some would argue that, I guess, but very much so is the government support towards entrepreneurs, retirees, people of all description, especially non-Portuguese, and the applicability of Portuguese residency programs. And yes, there's more than one, to entice persons that are non-Portuguese to relocate to Portugal. Miguel, Tiffany, the next slide, please, is the content slide, if you don't mind, page 2. Thank you. This is what we're going to canter through, ladies and gentlemen, to the contents of your talk before we go to questions and answers. There'll be some questions with each presenter and an open question and answer forum later on in the morning. It's going to be an hour, but we'll stay behind for those that do want to ask questions. We've got loads and loads of questions coming in. The applicability is global. We've got a global audience right away from the US, so very good morning US, very good afternoon and evening Middle East and Hong Kong, and a global audience, as well as some synergetic qualities of the webinar featuring the UK, Brexit, and how to move to Portugal. I'll be introducing each speaker briefly and then giving them 5 or 10 minutes to have them give you some topical news of the day, of the season, and as we emerge from this dreadful pandemic and crisis, and long may that be a permanent one. I would like, first of all, to introduce a lady I've known for many, many years, Christina Hippisley. the General Manager of the Portuguese Chamber of the Commerce for the UK. She became a Director of the Chamber in 2006 and the General Manager since 2009. Studied at Cambridge. Her career started in international advertising and public relations. She worked in Portugal and in the capital for 10 years, hence her linguistic abilities and many other talents. Christina ran her business in Portugal before it was sold, and then returned to the UK in London, and has been involved with the Chamber for quite some years, despite being a property developer before she joined the Chamber. Christina is responsible for the Chamber's moving to Portugal shows and seminars, whereas they may not be face-to-face sit down, they're very much like this, and Christina can announce when the next one will be, or the next ones will be, which are held frequently throughout the year. So, resources, support, assistance for persons and businesses that have a focus directed towards Portugal, including experiences and a case study. I welcome you all. I welcome Christina to you all, General Manager, Portuguese Chamber. Good morning, Christina.
Hello, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very much to Simon and Shelley and the Sovereign Group for inviting me to say a few words at today's seminar. As Simon says, Sovereign and the Portuguese Chamber of Commerce in the UK have a long and distinguished history together, and Sovereign have been corporate members of our chamber here in the UK for 15, 20 years. And Shelley's a recently new arrival in Portugal, and we're delighted as well to meet her. And she's joined a very strong team down in Sovereign Portugal. So in a nutshell, it's great to hear so many people around the world are interested in Portugal. Here in the UK has always been the second single biggest number of foreign residents in Portugal. So there's a very, very long tradition of British interest in Portugal. As Simon said earlier, there are over 500,000 expats living in Portugal, and a very large proportion of those are British. And essentially, the Portuguese Chamber of Commerce here in the UK promotes trade and industry between the two countries. And we obviously do a great deal of events around trade and business. We deal with a lot of British companies looking to go into Portugal and private individuals. The sort of information that we provide to people is very much based on our long relationship and long connections that we have in the international community. Our offices are in the Portuguese Embassy in central London. We work very closely with the Portuguese Trade and Investment Institute in London, which is a big government institution funneling investors into Portugal. And we're also part of the network of Portuguese Chambers of Commerce outside Portugal. So we're very much plugged into the institutional framework of the Portuguese government. We're also heavily involved in the all-party parliamentary group for Portugal in the British Parliament, where we liaise with MPs who are interested in Portugal and its trade and business issues. So the example of a sort of company that we might help in the business sector would be a British manufacturer or seller, marketer of, let's say, luggage. This is just the most recent example. The phone rang last week. It was a big manufacturer, importer of travel luggage for the UK market. They manufacture most of their stuff in Turkey, and they're thinking very hard of moving their manufacturing, their main suppliers, to Portugal. So we helped them talk to various institutions and private companies in Portugal that can set them up with the relevant factories in the north of Portugal that make the luggage, and we acted as a matchmaker and helped them meet the right people. But a very large part of our work, and one of the reasons why Simon's invited me today, is we are seeing ever more interest from the UK market and foreigners resident in the UK who are interested in moving to Portugal for all the reasons Simon already outlined. So what the Chamber has developed over the last 5 or 6 years is what we call our Moving to Portugal events. And this is where we, well, before the pandemic began, we used to do 3 or 4 quite large, very large actually, live events, exhibitions and seminars in the UK where people would come and listen to various of our members and companies talking about the realities of moving to Portugal, how you use the tax system, the lawyers, the real estate, all the lifestyle issues you'd be interested in. And they could also meet the exhibitors and talk to them one-to-one. The last one we were supposed to be doing was on the 17th of March 2020. So we had to postpone that with about 4 days notice. And sadly, we haven't been able to hold it yet, but we've obviously since March last year, but we are cautiously optimistic if here in the UK things continue to go smoothly, that we will be able to hold that next live event in London in the 2nd or 3rd week of October, but nothing is for sure yet. It's too early to say. In the meantime, we've been doing webinars like this, smaller, in terms of very focused on specific issues that people are asking us about: visas, tax, property, construction, all sorts of things like that. We've been doing a series of smaller, more focused webinars, and if anybody's interested in signing up to that database so that we can tell you later when those webinars are happening, just contact me. But over the summer we'll be doing some more. But in the meantime, I'm delighted to be here with Simon and Shelley to be able to help them answer some of the questions no doubt you have about UK residents and how people from the UK move to Portugal, and also what's happening in Portugal. So I think I've probably said enough for the moment, Simon. I'm sure you'd like to let some of our other...
quick question, Christina. Do you know when your next webinar is going to be for the audience? Because we
haven't got a date yet. We're waiting. We're working on a bit of a program at the moment. We're going to release details after Easter because a couple of our staff have been a bit sick recently, so we've had to make allowances. We've got a very small team, and as you know, things haven't been so good health-wise with some of us recently. So we've had to curtail our normal program of events because our team is so small. We are working on the next events, and we will be able to announce them very shortly. So as soon as we do, we'll let you guys know. If anybody else does want more information, just email me. My email contacts are at the end of the presentation.
And Christina, one final question for the delegation. What, apart from today and the questions coming in thick and fast already, what has been a common request and demand of the people visiting the Chamber, Friends of Portugal? What's been the common question, and from what nationality?
Well, interestingly, the phone rings in the Chamber office, and we will typically have a call from, for example, Mr. Simon Denton or the equivalent, who already knows Portugal very well. He's been going on holiday several years, but he's finally got to the point where he's decided that he would like to retire there properly. And he's basically asking us for a sort of 360-degree summary of what he needs to be doing. So what is his tax position? Who does he need to talk to? He knows more or less where he wants to buy a house, but he's not quite sure if he can, how does he transfer his pension? Can his private pension be paid in Portugal? He thinks he might want to build a house. Where can he find an architect? So what we have is, the Chamber obviously works with our very long-standing members. We have around 100 companies who are members of the Chamber. Everybody speaking today is a member of the Chamber. We have long-standing relationships with them, so we know very well they are to be trusted. And we will tend to matchmake and recommend to Mr. Simon Denton or whoever calls who he should best talk to give him the precise expert information in the UK, because there's nothing worse than the wrong information, and the Chamber never gives out wrong information. We prefer to tell you who you should talk to, give you a general overview and tell you who you should talk to, and then decide based on your personal circumstances. We've also recently had several questions from British people who run small or medium-sized businesses here in the UK who are having great problems with Brexit and have realised that it's probably easier to set up a Portuguese limited company to handle their business between the UK and Portugal to avoid all the Brexit paperwork. So that's another big theme that we're looking at a lot at the moment as well.
Good point. Spare the thought I ever get the other side of the desk. Anyway, I thank you, Christina, and I've had some questions coming in. I will frame the questioner just coming in now to Bruce. I'm welcoming Bruce Hawker, patiently sitting on the right hand of my screen. He's a director of Fine and Country Algarve, a well-known brand worldwide. And he's lived in the Algarve for 40 years, ladies and gentlemen. Now there's 497 of you in the room and still rising, an amazing turnout. But aside from being a director of Fine and Country, he's spent most of his career in the publishing industry. A founder, partner and CEO of Open Media Group and one of the directors of Fine and Country Algarve. And whilst you canter the audience through your experience, Bruce, and your event, if you look at the slide 2 here, an overview of the Portuguese property market, very welcome by one questioner. And the question was raised in terms of where is the most popular area in Portugal for UK nationals to retire. Thank you, Brian. And no doubt I can have a guess of that myself, but why not come from the expert I introduced you to, Bruce Hawker. Thank you, Bruce.
Morning, all. Simon, thank you very much for the introduction, and Shelley and all that's covering. It's great to be able to join you this morning. I've been close to the property market actually in Portugal as a whole, but generally in the Algarve for many years through my career in publishing newspapers and magazines here, later as a director of Fine and Country as well. So I'm very close to the industry, so I hope to be able to answer most questions thrown at me. Fine and Country in the Algarve, my wife and I have and our business partner have the license here for the Algarve with 3 offices across the region. We're very closely linked in with the other Fine and Country licensees covering Lisbon, Porto. So we cover the whole country basically, very much as far as continental Portugal is concerned. 3 offices across the Algarve. So to give you a quick update on the market here, I'll come to Brian's question a bit later on where's the best place to retire, which is obviously a bit subjective, but I'll come to that later. It's important to put the property market in Portugal as a whole and in the Algarve into context, specifically of the COVID pandemic and of Brexit at the moment. If we look back to the financial recessions, 2008, 2009, the Portuguese property market, much like other destinations around Europe, almost ground to a halt. Property prices dropped here in the Algarve by around 30%. And we then saw that by 2013, prices started to grow again. And then it's been basically year-on-year growth since 2013. We picked up the losses made in the last recession, we estimate in 2016/2017. And it's been an average 6% growth in property prices since 2013. That's according to our data at Fine and Country, which is pretty much in keeping with the figures released by the Portuguese real estate bodies and specialist press. So fast forward to today, 1 year into COVID, and we've also got Brexit kind of behind us or with us, or however we want to look at it. And once again, we see widespread economic hardship and business failures here in the Algarve, in the tourism industry, in the leisure and catering industry around the world, obviously, as we all know. But the property market has been incredibly resilient. This applies very much in the UK, in the US. The property market doesn't seem to have suffered from the effects of COVID, as most of us would have thought it would. We were certainly expecting to be tightening our belt in terms of Fine and Country and battering down the hatches, much like the last recession. But I'm glad we didn't, because we've actually been busier than ever. in terms of, not in terms of transactions, because obviously people have not been here on the ground, but in terms of inquiries, in terms of dealing with buyers, dealing with vendors as well. Our team we haven't furloughed any of our staff. We've been, everyone's been absolutely flat out. Even when we weren't allowed to open our offices, everybody was working from home. As Christina pointed out earlier, doing remote viewings, 3D viewings. We've actually, if you'd have asked us in December last year, would people buy properties without physically visiting them? We would have said very, very unlikely, very occasional. Last year, we actually sold just one property virtually last year. This year, in 1 week alone, we actually did 3 virtual sales in one of our offices with people in different countries around the world. And the demand for this is surprising everyone. There are other agents are reporting multiple sales carried out remotely. And it's obviously linked into the pent-up demand. People are so used to doing everything online these days. People are used to having Zoom meetings rather than meeting in person. In many cases, I can think of somebody who recently bought a property from us who already had their kids booked in to start at the international school. They were in another country somewhere else in the world. They had to get a property. They didn't want to rent, they wanted to buy. They looked around, they eventually found the property that they liked, they got the advice they needed, they went ahead and bought it. And they'll be able to come over in time for September to start, but they haven't visited the property, and that was a substantial villa. So it's quite surprising that's happening.
Was this demand in terms of buying virtually, was that a demand out of a lifestyle move, or was it more to do with fiscal departure from a home nation and taking advantage of the residency programs in Portugal?
Okay, as far as we are concerned, we sell more individual villas. That's what we specialise in selling at Fine & Country in the Algarve. So pretty much all of our virtual sales have been lifestyle moves, attracted by the tax benefits, obviously, and the residential benefits. But these are people who actually want to come and live here, to put their kids in school here, to maybe even to carry on working remotely, running their businesses in whichever country they're from. So it's certainly more of a lifestyle move. But the fact is, we haven't seen any drop in demand. Quite the opposite. We've actually had a 40% increase year on year in the number of inquiries that we are receiving from buyers. Last year we sold to people from over 20 different countries. The last 2 years, 26 different countries, and inquiries are coming in from currently a total of 46 different countries in a month. It's quite phenomenal what we're seeing. The demand and appetite for Portugal has really exceeded any of our expectations. Obviously, what's holding things back is that people aren't able to travel here. So once they are able to travel, and once flights get back on track, we really are expecting to be busier than ever. But as Simon pointed out, the profile and the motivation of the buyer has changed. Most important reason being the Algarve was always about holiday homes in the past. If we certainly put the clock back to 5 years, someone buying a property here generally was buying a holiday home. These days, we can put the buyers into 3 groups really. You still have the holiday home buyer, probably making up less than a third of the market now. You have the investment buyer. A lot of the investment buyers are also buying remotely at the moment. So projects of apartments, it's not really our game at Fine & Country Algarve, but it's a very strong market in investment property with the Golden Visa. People who don't actually want to live here as such, but just want to get the Golden Visa, want to buy a property and just use it as an investment and to get a foothold here. But the biggest market for us is definitely the lifestyle by the international buyer who wants to move here, live here, either retire, or in many cases run their business taking advantage of the NHR tax break. So there could be a business in the UK or anywhere else in the world. Yeah, so it's generally very positive, and Sovereign will obviously talk about, Shelley will talk about the tax breaks and how people can run businesses and benefit from this. But this has been a big driver to certainly to the growth that we've seen in the market. Simon.
Bruce, you've been in Portugal 40 years. You speak the language, which not everyone has that major experience, let alone your linguistic abilities. An expat view, you are an expat, you're born in Britain, and a focus on managing and owning a business. Picture the room picture the 526 people in the room, actually. Thank you, 526, more than the cricket score. That one of those, more of those, want to a journey into Portugal, but as a business lady, a businessman, not retiring and just lifestyle. Quick summary on that, Bruce, if you may, because we want to give plenty of questions to the audience as well.
So, running a business here in Portugal, like anywhere, especially as a foreigner, and especially if you don't speak the language, has its challenges. As you said, Simon, it was never a problem for me. It's actually, I think, 42 years now I worked. I came here in 1978 with my parents, so I've never actually worked in the UK, apart from obviously doing business in the UK and other countries around the world, but my business life has always been here. It's very important to, especially in this country where bureaucracy is rife in many ways, to navigate that correctly and to have the right advice, and at the very least to have experienced Portuguese speaking staff if you don't have the know-how to manage things yourselves. There are lots of obstacles here which are fairly easy to overcome if you know how. In my publishing business, there's an entity here in Portugal called ERC, E-R-C, which translates roughly to the body to regulate the press. I mean, who would have thought in a democracy that there would be a government entity to regulate the press? But it's there. It's a major pain for publishers, but we have to follow the rules. And if we don't follow the rules, we face fines. The same applies with real estate. There's a government body to regulate the real estate industry. Compliance is quite complex. We actually went to the point of employing a full-time in-house lawyer who's also a qualified data protection officer from last year, because our staff were just getting completely bogged down with all the paperwork. Provenance of money from buyers, and so my answer to the question, Simon, is really it can be a rewarding place to do business. It's a good place to do business, but you've got to follow the rules. And too many people come here, their caution goes to the wind, and then when things go a bit wrong, then they end up with a mess.
Okay, yes, always take the best possible advice, and they're around you today, ladies and gentlemen. Right, thank you for the inside Bruce's talk there. There was an answer to a number of questions, why we're spilling over a little bit in topical time, but there was some questions. And Andy, yes, there is many international schools in Portugal. Friends of mine in Sovereign and clients of mine send their children to international schools, and international schools are based throughout the nation of Portugal. So yes, international schools, but the domestic state schools are also of a quality that we would come to expect from an EU nation and an ally, let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, to the United Kingdom amongst other nations. Now, Shelley Ren, an officer of Sovereign Consultoria Limited, probably needs a little introduction to many of the 528 people, but I'll introduce her formally in any case. Shelley has over 30 years experience, wow, 3 decades, in investment advisory services, and is fully integrated. Her office subsidiary, one of the oldest of our global group, fully integrated as a member subsidiary of our global group. and an expert in regard to delivering advice and solutions with our bilingual team in Portugal, a combination of Portuguese domiciled and resident staff and international staff, delivering solutions on the non-habitual residency visa, the Golden Visa, the D7 visa, representing clients that make the journey as not just a visitor, but making the journey investing in Portugal and relocating to reside in Portugal, both for business, retirement, and obviously for lifestyle. Cantering you through deciding to remain a visitor, addressing the challenge of being dual resident, and I'm coming onto that myself as well from a UK perspective. Identify the best residency program. There's a lot of questions on this, ladies and gentlemen, will be covered. Dealing with Brexit implications, less turbulent than it was pre-31st of December, and available tax planning solutions, what we are well famous for. Shelley, my colleague, over to you.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks to the panel. Nice to see everyone today. It's an enormous turnout, and thank you to everyone for taking the time. As Simon mentioned, our business here is a team of bilingual professionals in the space to help our clients navigate all aspects of residency, citizenship, and I guess I like to use the word financial well-being. As Bruce clearly mentioned, Portugal does have a lot of very strict rules and regulations about the way things are done, and navigating the system here from a lifestyle perspective, from a financial perspective, from an ongoing tax planning perspective, is important to engage professional services providers like ourselves that are actually able to do the full scope of work and understand the nuances that go with dealing with global international expatriates. I myself have spent the last 30 years in the Middle East looking after such clients as yourselves that are listening today. And Portugal has, much like my counterparts on the panel, has absolutely exploded with interest. And in the last year, since I've actually been here, we've seen our business and interest almost double in terms of the inquiries and the type of clients that are talking to us with regards to their planning. So today we're going to answer a lot of your questions, and I think one of the big things that is becoming more and more prevalent is just how can you live in Portugal and what's the most efficient way to do that from an immigration perspective. And so the function of immigration is the Golden Visa or the D7 or investment visas if you're coming here to set up a business and actually bring perhaps an entity that you run in another country. So it does need a great deal of discussion around what's the best solution for you. And in Sovereign, we have an entire division that supports the entry into this country. And for many Brits who used to have the freedom of coming and going, we're able to dispel the confusion about how you can live here. And I'm going to touch on that in a moment, because the best residency program for one person is not the same as another. And a lot of people that are talking to us wish to be dual resident, in particular in the UK. And as a result of that, some very important planning needs to be done. And both myself and Simon are the people to help you navigate that process. The implications with Brexit have been quite far-flung, more so for those people who have homes here or wish to come and go freely. The 90 and 180-day rule now exists, and we were debating this yesterday, Christina and I, at some length. We, as you may tell from my accent, I am British, although I haven't lived in the UK for over 35 years, but nonetheless, I carry that passport. And as a result of that, I cannot spend more than 90 in 180 days in the EU Schengen zone. And that includes the entire Schengen zone, not just coming and going to Portugal, because it's all connected by Brussels. Now, this causes hurdles for many, and we can help navigate that with other solutions which can be provided through the D7 and the Golden Visa, and we'll answer questions on that as they come along. Then for the most part, a large area of our business is ensuring that your global wealth and your tax is actually correctly put together with the right plan and the right guidance. The NHR is a function of tax, and people are completely confused and think that because it's national habitual residency, it is connected to your residential status. It isn't. Your residential status is determined by your passport and your golden visa, your D7 or your EU nationality or another. When you come and live here, you have the ability to take advantage of one of the best tax regimes in Europe and register as a non-habitual resident. But it is not a tax-free holiday. It needs careful planning, but the tax is very favourable on income, dividends, pensions and other assets. And a large part of the work we do in our business here in Sovereign in Portugal is to assist clients with their NHR setup. So once we've handled the residential status and dealing with the Brexit, for those of you that are implicated by that, we're able to help you with your cross-border tax planning. And a lot of the questions that I've seen coming in the last 20 minutes, I will answer as Simon puts them to me. So to suffice to say, we provide a complete concierge service for your well-being of move into Portugal, and we work with experts such as Bruce and Christina in our panels to help provide an end-to-end service and ensure that you're dealing with trusted professionals who can make sure that your transition is a smooth one. We don't just deal with people who are retired. Our business is helping people, the young professionals, which is, I would say, a vast majority who have come in here for the lifestyle. So it's not just for the Brits, it's not just for the retired. We are a global business and we operate with global citizens. So that's a quick summary from me, and I look forward to taking the questions, Simon, that will help people understand the different immigration rules.
Shelley, one that's coming up quite a lot, and thank you, Cara. We already have a house and usually go to the Algarve for 6 to 7 months every year. I've imagined Cara is British citizen, incidentally. How do we continue to do this with the 90-day restriction? Sorry for the loaded question, putting on the spot, Shelley, but you and I do that a lot to each other. But what do you say about that? Well,
you can't, is the answer. You can spend the 90 days in any 180, and that's a rolling period. So as an example, if you're like many that come here, you probably like to winter here. So let's say you do January, February and March, and you do that consistently. Then you have done your 90 days and you leave. You cannot return again until you've got past the June, July and August, April, May and June's part of that 6 months. You have to wait for that 6-month period before you can then re-enter. So you have to be very careful with your day count. And currently the border agency here is obviously now pushing you in the queue that no longer takes you through the EU passport channel, and you have to go through the same channel that anyone does, for example, from South Africa, who are treated as a third country. So the best way to find the real detail on that is third country citizens under the EU rules. I would point out this is not a function of the Portuguese government trying to make it difficult for people. This is a function of Schengen, which is run by Brussels and the EU. So the way in which, if you wanted to do that, to come in here, depending on your personal financial circumstances, is either a golden visa, which gives you the freedom of travel in and out of the country for up to 6 months. Any Schengen country that you spend more than 183 days in anyway, you then become taxable. But the golden visa is a function of moving in and out. And the D7 is perhaps an alternative, because if you're spending that much time a year here, I do envisage potentially you might be retired. And if you're not retired, the D7 could still work. But then, of course, we have to come back to the discussion, which you're going to be covering, on how many days you can spend in the UK.
And one of the questions, Shelley, is the essential criteria to qualify under the D7 programme. Shelley, do you like it quickly if you can?
Yeah, so that's not as complicated as some think. It's surrounded by things such as immovable property, so rental income, passive income through investments, pension income, dividend income. Essentially, the Portuguese, in summary, want to see that you can support yourself, and the actual criteria relates back to the minimum wage. So the first applicant has to prove €7,630 a year as a base for the application. The second applicant, 3,800. So let's just call a husband and wife here, 13,000 euros of an annual income from a source, such as an investment or a pension, is sufficient to qualify. And the Portuguese demonstrate that to the Portuguese when you apply for the visa. We handle D7 visas for our clients. We take them through the process. We prepare them for their visits to the embassy. We make sure that all of the fiscal element is set up here with banking in Portugal, so they're ready to go. Some clients already have it. However, what I must emphasize is the D7 is a function of residence here. You are then considered resident, and then you are taxed on your worldwide income.
Great, fine, thank you. Just looking at another question, a gentleman came in just then, is that he was saying that there's no Portuguese inheritance tax that we know about compared to the shocking level of UK inheritance tax of 40%, which I'm going to come on to in a minute. So no, there's no Portuguese inheritance tax, sir, especially when property is in the will acquired by immediate members of family. So husband and wife, no inheritance tax exemption exists in the UK anyway. Surviving parent dies, children inherit, no inheritance tax in Portugal either. But if you're UK domiciled, that will be subject to an IHT, a UK IHT claim, or depends on your domicile, sir, which we'll come into in a moment. But another benefit of Portugal for the long term is to relocate, establish in time a domicile of choice in Portugal, and relieve yourself from the UK inheritance tax. Coming on to that in a moment. So we've had about 15 minutes of questions. Shelley, do you want to do the introduction to the next speaker, please?
Yes. I'd like to introduce my colleague Simon, who has been with the business for some 20 years, although in the industry for more than 3 decades. I'd like to say he's a bit older than me, but I don't think he is. Between us, we worked out the other day that we have about 80 years of experience in the international tax planning, trustee and corporate services, and Simon has been a very instrumental part of the growth of the sovereign business. His experience in the fiduciary industry is enormous. Market entry for corporates and clients going into various jurisdictions. His career started back when God was a boy, sorry Simon, and he now runs our business in London since 1986 and is a senior director of the Sovereign Group. And I will be posing some questions to Simon shortly, because his wealth of experience, not just with Brits, but with the Brits, is substantial. And when we are going to help the clients today on here and those that we're talking to currently about dual residency, Simon is the go-to expert. So Simon, I will hand over to you, and I'll hand over to you with that question, which is the anomaly that many think that particularly the Brits come to Portugal or anywhere else in the world, for example, and feel that the IHT inheritance tax planning is removed from their world. And I'd like you to explain your experience of that and what those solutions are that we can offer.
Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, thank you very much for that marvelous introduction. I'll try and keep to expectation. Right, my talk, departing a home nation. I mean, you have days of seminars on this domicile and residence. I'm going to canter you through it in about 5 minutes, a record for me, incidentally. But departing habitually and fiscally from your home nation. We've got Europeans, we've got Middle Eastern folk, Chinese and Americans. So this is not just centric to the UK. It's departing, being the good leaver, arriving correctly, again, in hand with the right advisors, and avoiding that consequence of being dual residents, which I think is a fate worse than death. Practical guidelines: commit to selling or renting your principal place of residence. That's your home country, current home country residence. Reduce and minimize home nation work duties, but you can still be a board member, not the only one, and you can still be a shareholder. Under the non-habitual residency regime, dividends, one question, dividends from a UK company to a Portuguese resident that has acquired non-habitual resident status, dividends are not subject to tax in Portugal, providing it comes from a white listed onshore type of company. Be sure not to make the home-based company resident for tax purposes in Portugal. So if you're managing an overseas company from Portugal because you are convening meetings, holding meetings, taking decisions, not delegating back to your board in the UK, France, Belgium, Spain, anywhere else, your overseas company will be resident for tax purposes in Portugal. Dual reporting, dual accounts. What's the point in going to Portugal? Be prepared to demonstrate that substantial ties and one's vital place of interest, ladies and gentlemen, has become the nation of Portugal, and you're not therefore exposed to double reporting. How to do this? Speak to the advisors, plan accordingly, give it a little bit of extra time. Implications of dual residency, which is captioned in the content there on page 2. Dual residency, you're still going to be subject to reporting at tax level to the home nation and the Portuguese nation. You're going to be liable to taxation in both countries and relying on double taxation agreements and complex tiebreakers. So you're doubling or tripling costs by not leaving the current nation correctly, neatly, and smartly. Portuguese company, if you set one up, could be resident in the country which you're leaving from, or be subject to dual reporting, dual taxation, not necessarily dual taxation, but dual costs. It does defeat the object if you're trying to become resident of Portugal, but you don't actually succeed in departing correctly. Now, the UK statutory residence test, just to create a bit of a case study, was passed, enacted by UK Parliament in 2013, pursuant to the Finance Act 2013. It's harsh, but at least the law is clear. We don't have to rely on a court case that happened in 1892 to determine where one is resident and how their situation has been stabilised or not. But it's quite a complex piece of legislation. I had to read it twice to really understand it. And you can be automatically non-UK resident if that's your objective by leaving the UK now, because it's in 5 days time, 6 days time, it's going to be the start of the new UK fiscal year. So maybe not enough time to leave now, but leave the UK before the start of a new fiscal year, usually in the first quarter of a calendar year. If you spend less than 16 nights, wow, 16 nights, it's hardly a 2 week, it's hardly 2 weeks at Wimbledon, is it? Live less than 16 nights in the UK, or work full-time overseas, spending less than 90 nights in the UK, and spending less than 30 nights or 30 days working in the UK. So that's kind of a harsh reality in determining automatic non-UK residence. But you're going to be automatically UK resident if you happen to make the mistake, or not the mistake, or happen to just live in the UK for 183 nights. Why leave, or why try to become resident of Portugal if you are going to spend 183 nights? And you have a home, or you have a home in the UK and spend 30 nights consecutively in that home, or you are working 75% of your year, 273 days in the UK. So that's when you become automatically UK resident by trying to leave the UK. I've discussed with you automatic non-UK residence, and if you cannot determine your situation within those two tests, we look at what's called the substantial ties test, which will fall into many of our listeners, delegates, and people seeking to move to Portugal. And there's 5 tests, ladies and gentlemen. Are you leaving your spouse, children, and pets behind? Some people actually prefer to take their cat and dog before they actually take the spouse. They're more worried about that. But if you're leaving your spouse behind, then you've got a family tie in the UK. If you have a property available for your use, rental property, a partial rental property, a main residence, or a family property that's available for your occupation, that's accommodation tie. If you work more than 40 days in the UK, that's a work tie. It's number 3. If you've been resident of the last 2 years, many of you have, so you're not going to shake that tie for a couple of years. And if you spend more time in the UK than Portugal, then what's the point in trying to become resident of Portugal? So those are the ties. And most people that seek to go to France, Italy, Greece, Portugal, they've all got residency programs, ladies and gentlemen. This business about the EU or the EU Commission, the EU Parliament saying tax competition is a nasty thing, they're all at it. Greece, Italy, Ireland, the United Kingdom, okay, we're not in the EU, but we've not left Europe, Portugal, they're all sponsoring residency programs, but Portugal is one of the best. So if you have 3 ties, an accommodation tie, a 40 days of work, and you've been resident for the last 2 years in the UK, please live in the UK for less than 46 nights. Because if you live in the UK in the next tax year for 46 nights, you'll be still resident of the UK. Statutory residence test, ladies and gentlemen, which is covering those questions that have been asked by Brenda, James, and one other person, I forget the name. There you have on the statute residence test. And these laws tend to be in place for lots of other nations, Spain, France. It's not just your day counting, it's where your central place of vital interests are, where your family are located. So these rules are generally in existence in most of the fierce onshore places. Now, domicile. Questions are coming back on domicile. If I move to Portugal, leave the UK, spend time in Portugal, not going back for much, am I still going to be subject to UK inheritance tax? Yes, you are, is the answer. UK domiciled persons, that's UK citizens that are UK domiciled and have been UK resident for the vast majority of their life, as an example, will be subject to inheritance tax of 40% come their demise. The worst tax on the planet. The US compared to the UK is marvellous for estate duty and inheritance tax, because inheritance tax in the US starts at £11.5 million. In the UK, it's £325,000, which doesn't even get you $500,000 these days. Non-UK DOMs, I would argue that Bruce is non-UK domiciled, are not subject to inheritance tax, only inheritance tax visited on their UK assets if Bruce does have a UK asset or 2 or more. How a British person like Shelley, who's been non-resident for the UK for quite some time, not myself because I moved back to the UK obviously in many years ago, how to establish a domicile of new choice, a domicile of Portuguese choice, because Portugal doesn't have an inheritance tax. It's decided by governments around the world that reducing and eliminating inheritance tax wins votes. It's just a shame that our Conservative and Labour elected prime ministers don't, unfortunately, carry the same view. Inheritance tax is political and awful. But you can establish a new domicile of choice, buy a home in Portugal, become permanent resident, establish a business and financial ties, establish social, political and religious connections. I'm not saying go to church, but those things can help. Dispose of a UK main residence. Don't have to sell it, just rent it. Buy a burial plot in Portugal. Make a new will in Portugal. Educate your children in Portugal. It's international schools. David, thank you very much for the question. Sever UK business, social and economic ties. I've got to use the word abandon. Abandon the UK. Still have a UK passport, have a nice asset or 2, have a bank account, but abandon. And with this, we can facilitate a ruling if the client or the delegate in the room today, 521 incidentally, forms a permanent intention to reside indefinitely in Portugal, and then come the untimely demise with a ruling, UK inheritance tax at 40% should not be on point, and you won't be fighting with, the family won't be fighting with the asset managers to recover the 40% loss, because that is a pretty serious aspect of planning. Become Portuguese domiciled, no Portuguese inheritance tax, become non-UK domiciled, acquiring a domicile of Portuguese choice, which you can do usually after 4 years of permanent residence. Now, that concludes my snippets on departing home nation, dual residency, UK domicile, applicability to the audience. And I'm just starting to take questions now. And the question I will wish to yes, here we go. Vikas. I want to run a business in Portugal. I'm Indian passport holder. What residency visa should I acquire? Shelley and Bruce and Christina, if we can give one-line answers or very fast answers, then we can go up the page. We can go up the page, Alex. We can go up the page with the questions. Shelley, Indian, non-EU national, wanting to come to Portugal to run a business. Mute.
Yeah, thanks, Miguel. If they can, the gentleman with the question, he can come in here, he can set up a business. If he employs more than 5 people, then he can use the visa solution that is a business visa, and it's a form of the Golden Visa. It's got a slightly different name. Depending on the activity, he can set up here and he can use that as his visa for entry to the country and run his business through here, and we can help with that. So the answer is yes, we can do that.
Thank you. Our house is currently, this is Mike, thank you, Mike. Our house is currently owned by a Delaware company. Yes, because Delaware and the US is not on the Portuguese blacklist. There appears to be no benefit of doing this anymore. Although companies never die, people do. Shelley, quick
no taxable gain or benefit for owning a property through a non-resident company in Portugal any further. That said, it has personal, perhaps, inheritance planning function, and we discuss with our clients that bigger picture plan, but it has no taxable advantage in Portugal.
Thank you. Bruce, Ricardo says, a quick overview, 2 lines then, Bruce, of the real estate trends in Lisbon and Cascais, which is where the Formula 1 track is, isn't it? Come on, Lewis. A quick property trend on Lisbon and Cascais.
Correct you very quickly, Formula 1's going to be here in the Algarve, Simon.
That's
right. Well, I'm not that close to the market in Lisbon and Cascais, but our partners at Fine & Country, Lisbon, Cascais, report certainly stronger growth in the market than we've had here in the Algarve. Lisbon and Cascais have boomed over recent years. Here we've had strong and steady growth. There's still no sign of it slowing down in terms of demand. They're reporting the same increases in demand as us, so all very positive. That's the quick answer.
Thank you, Bruce. Under Rajat, thank you, Rajat. Under the NHR, non-habitual residency program, with the 20% rate of personal taxation, the highest rate, does this apply to dividends from a UK company? Probably no. And when, I know it doesn't, but when does the 20% tax, Shelley, come into play? Because he has seen, as I did last week, that for regular residents, probably Portuguese nationals and residents, the top rate of tax is 48%, but that doesn't apply to non-habitual residency, does it? Thank you.
No, actually, it can do, yes. You can be subject to progressive rates depending on how your income is sourced. And if you don't generate your income from a high-level profession, then you can be subject to the progressive tax rates. And the high-level profession are, you know, entrepreneurs, doctors, lawyers, scientists, lots of people in the tech space, architects, that sort of thing. But absolutely, you can be subject on salaried income at the higher rates of progressive tax rates. So just because you're NHR doesn't mean that you qualify for the 20%. And it's important for us to assess what you do for a living to understand whether you would be satisfying the rules under the 20%.
Okay, but dividends are normally not subject to tax.
Dividend income, no, because dividend income generally is taxed in the country of source under the corporation tax rules. So dividend income under the NHR programme and interest are not taxed.
And one other question, I think pension income, qualifying pension income, Shelley, is 10% tax in Portugal.
Yes, the new regime is 10%. If you were previously registered NHR before March 2020, then you're still under the 0 rate. There are discussions afoot that these rates can change all the time. So the regime at the moment is extremely attractive because it is not taxing your dividend or interest or investment income.
Pension, 0% dividends, very good. No wonder there's 500 people in the audience. Christina, what is the most popular places to retire what is the most popular area in Portugal for retire? Brian, thank you.
Brian, well, good question. I would have to say, in the old days, you would have said the Algarve, but that is still true because there's a very large contingent of Brits already living in the Algarve. And as a result, Bruce may agree with me, anecdotally, we think around 60,000 Brits live in the Algarve most of the year or permanently. On top of that, you've got at least another 40,000 nationalities, Germans, French, Swedes, all sorts of nationalities. So the Algarve offers a very cosmopolitan, busy, lively international scene in that sense. You can meet lots of Brits and lots of other nationalities as well as wonderful Portuguese, obviously, who make it their home as well. So I would say the Algarve is still just about the most popular region to retire to. But I would also say that lots and lots of people are looking to retire in the Lisbon area around Cascais and Sintra, and also in some of the quieter interior villages, maybe half an hour inland, where you get exceptional value for money. And again, without realizing it, you may find that you find a British contingent as well, or a large foreign contingent. There's a lot of Dutch in the Alentejo, for example, a lot of Brits and other nationalities on the coastal Alentejo near Villanova de Milfonte and that sort of area, just north of the Algarve. Porto, not so much. Porto in the north, you have a strong contingent of long-standing British families, the port families, some of the big factories owned by Brits, etc. But there's not such a large expatriate retired community up there. The weather's a little bit wetter. It's a bit colder. You know, it's perhaps closer to some English weather, so it's not necessarily the first destination people think of to retire to. Again, depending on the budget you have when you retire, in terms of the price you want to spend on a house, that sadly may well affect a bit where you move to in Portugal now. But certainly, you're right about the Algarve. I would also argue Lisbon and Estoril and Cascais and areas of the interior as well.
And it's notwithstanding that it is a little bit wetter and temperate in Portugal, it's why they've got the fantastic wine and port.
Yeah, exactly.
Used to be a collector of that when I lived overseas. Mike has come in saying, where can I find an application for a D7 visa? Well, any information and advice needed from Bruce, Christina, Shelley and myself, we have standard information sheet. Now, Miguel, can you turn to the last page, please? The contact details, page 4, and the next one, thank you. This is coming to you, this little 4-page little item is coming to you by email in the next day. There's the contact details. So we have residency papers on Golden Visa, non-habitual residency, D7, moving to Portugal. Bruce and Christina have the same as well. Mike, I notice you're interested in QROPS, that's a qualifying recognised overseas pension scheme, moving your UK pension into a recognised pension scheme. And as you intend to live in the EU, it would be beneficial if that pension is moved to a Maltese scheme, not a Guernsey scheme. Malta not being on the blacklist, and why would it be, of Portugal? So that is that's that. Sarah, thank you. Can one have a property in another EU country without affecting one's tax implications in Portugal? Yes, Shelley.
Yes, of course. We have clients that have multiple assets in different countries around the world. whatever their tax position is in those countries is dependent on the amount of time they spend there. One thing I would say that is to take consideration of is capital gains tax, and even under the NHR, the capital gains tax is applicable at 28% on the sale of property if the property is in a jurisdiction where it is not paying the capital gains tax. So if you own multiple assets, it's perfectly fine. You can have as many homes as you like. When you dispose of those assets, there may be implications in Portugal, which therefore we do assessments for clients on at the time.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to go on for 5 more minutes because we've got still close to 500 in the room, and we had 540 at a peak. So thank you for staying on. I'm trying to canter you through the questions and trying to share it out to the presenters, but thick and fast. This came in at 8:44. With a D7 visa, is one allowed to work in Portugal? I don't think so, but hold there, Shelley. And can you confirm if one has NHR status and rents out an annex in one's home or rents out separate property, the tax rate on any income is 28%. I assume that's a Portuguese property. So starting, Shelley, D7, can you work? I don't believe you can.
Yes, you can. You can,
oh,
yeah.
Yep. Wonderful. Other countries you can't. And can you confirm that if one has non-habitual resident status and rents out an annex of the main home, it will be subject to tax, won't it?
Correct, it is. It's that the non-habitual regime has no preferential treatment to a Portuguese asset that is rented out. You're taxed at the Portuguese rates on rental income. If it's set up correctly, and it's important to set up, and there are different licenses for renting, whether you're doing a touristic license or a long-term rent, and those have to be registered at the tax office, and you're subject to tax income on those. You do not pay tax on rental income in assets that are outside of the country, because by the norm of the fact that where they are, they're taxed anyway.
And qualifying income can be subject to tax at 10%. I assume that's pensionable income there, Shelley, whereas dividends paid from a qualifying company to a person living in Portugal with NHS status will be taxed at 0.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mike. Christina, sorry for this, but landing you in it, bit of a pass. There's a lot of questions on having relating to medical care.
I can handle that one. Yeah. AFPOP.
AFPOP sounds like something from an ice cream van. AFPOP are the organisation that can help with this, and we don't want to be getting in that. Bruce, hope that's not Bruce. Medical care.
Yeah, the Portuguese national health system interestingly rates higher on a global rating than the UK's. That's an interesting fact that we often pull out at the Moving to Portugal events that we've held with Christina. But most foreigners who are moving here to retire would take up private healthcare, and we have excellent private healthcare in Portugal, both in Lisbon, Porto, and here in the Algarve. And the actual cost, even without insurance, of private healthcare here is very, very attractive. It's surprising that health tourism, it actually isn't more popular here too. For example, the cost of an MRI here in a private hospital is less than half of the cost in the UK. That's just one example. But the health insurance is very reasonable. I'm in my mid-50s. I have really good comprehensive health insurance. It costs me about €800 a year, and it's excellent value. So
is that a family policy, Bruce, or a single one?
I actually have a single one, but my wife has one for her and the kids. The kids are all grown up now. But the reason we're separate is because I had a health condition that had to be excluded some years ago. But you could get a family policy for about around 1,000 for a family policy. Yeah. We are. I won't say the word, but we do pay too much in the UK, don't we? Otherwise called getting done. My wife and I, thank you, Stephen and Jennifer. My wife and I are 68, and I have probably only 2 more months
To go before finishing the last contract. Thank God for that. So I would like to know if the retirement dream is now not going to be possible, or if it could be. What should we start doing to prepare for the 12-month visit before we make the change? So Stephen is married to Jennifer. I think they're British. 2 months to go. Good luck with that, Stephen. And then he wants to retire in Portugal and to live there for probably 12 months, and then on, I'd say golden visa. But what do you say? Anyone from the?
Well, you can't unless you do to come in on a different visa, which it would be a D7 visa, because that's just a function of being able to stay here for that longer period of time. If you then leave and you stay out of the country for 6 months, that visa goes anyway because you're not satisfying the criteria of it. So you will pay tax for that 12 months that you're here. But again, under NHR, probably very little if planned correctly. So to do your 12 months to see whether you like it, that would be the way to actually come in. If you don't like it, of course, like any other country, you can leave and you can relinquish all of your registrations. But again, you must follow the process and the rules to do that. Because as Bruce mentioned earlier on in the meeting, it's very essential to go through the right channels to do those things. It's not just, oh, well, I'm going to go. You have to deregister.
Okay, thank you. And Ellie, hello, Ellie. Would my husband and I be able to obtain a residency visa through setting up a construction business in Portugal? My husband currently works self-employed in the UK and would like to move his work to Portugal. So good point. Moving out of the UK, taking my practical advice points and settling in Portugal. Another one for you, Shelley. It's a business setup, isn't it?
The business setup. So we incorporate Portuguese companies for our clients, part of our corporate services business. We help them get those companies set up. And again, as long as they fit and go through the criteria of the employment rules and the number of employees, then yes, they can use that company as part of their residency.
And sorry, Christina and Bruce, but it's all on this D7 and residency. We are joining the webinar tomorrow. Thanks, Andrew, for giving the question a little before the start. It would have been yesterday, wouldn't it? We are joining the webinar tomorrow. I'm particularly interested in the effects of dual residency. Well, I've covered that fairly well, but if you want the specific notes on the statutory residence test, you're very welcome. And I suggest you email me on the Estenton there. But we are considering applying for a D7 visa, but still intend to spend several months in the UK. Any advice on the consequence of dual residence? I've got to answer this, haven't I? Any advice on the consequences of dual residency, particularly in the UK, would be appreciated. I would try and avoid being dual resident. Apply to become resident of Portugal. Try to make Portugal your central place of vital interests. Yes, you can still have connections back home. You're not trying to lose your domicile. Yes, you can still have a bit of work, a bit of accommodation. You've been resident of the UK for the last couple of years, and then you can find out your day counting. Even with an accommodation tie, a work tie, and being in the UK for the last 2 years, you're able to be non-resident if you spend less than 46 days. And if you only have two ties, that increases to 90. Do come back to me if you want to. Couple more questions. NHR, its protection is backdated to the date of a residency establishment. Thus, a foreign capital gains tax event is theoretically sheltered from the date of residency approval. Leaving Portugal prior to, okay, Shelley, and leaving Portugal prior to the NHR expiry. Is there an exit tax? I don't think there is an exit tax if you know. No. Good. Unlike the US, for example, and in Scandinavia there is. And NHR, the date of your NHR, Shelley, if I could ask that.
Yeah, well, first of all, you get set up as a resident. I suspect this potential person has got a situation where we're just coming up to the fact that a lot of people last year got a certificate of residency and didn't apply for their NHR, and you only have until 31st of March of the following year to get that done. So there's a lot of people last year that came in, got their residency certificates and didn't register. So if you didn't do that by tomorrow's deadline, you would miss the date, and therefore you're registered under the progressive rate systems. The NHR is a function of 10 years allocated to your tax number, and that 10 years starts from the minute that the tax office has registered you as resident. Now, in some, and Bruce will have a wry smile here, in some local municipalities, the tax office date it back to the date of your residency certificate, and others date it at the time of actually you go to the tax office. There is no clear line on the exact time whether it's going to be backdated to a certificate of residence or when you go to the tax office and register. Going forward, we suspect this is going to be more aligned, and therefore it will be back to back. But during COVID, it hasn't been, and it's been a slightly tenuous situation. But it lasts for 10 years. It can be backdated to the date of your certificate. That depends on the tax office where you are. And if there is a capital gains tax question there, it depends on where the capital gain has been generated, whether there would be a liability here, and we can talk to that client and help them understand if that's the case. Yeah. And one final point, if you leave Portugal, the NHR it stays with your tax code for that 10-year period. So if you went and came back again, it's still there with you, but you will lose the years.
That's quite generous. Christina and Bruce, I'll start with Christina, giving your voice a rest there. Do we have, this is from an, well, I won't say the surname, but Chris' name is R and the surname is L. Thank you, Miss or Mr. RL. Do you have a 1, 2, 3 guide to move to Portugal? Looking to move husband, good for him, and wife with elderly father. Husband and father retired. Wife may able to continue to work from home in Portugal. Careful. Some help with initial guide would be initial guide of what we need to do and what order. I think you've got something there in the chamber, haven't you, Christina?
Funnily enough, we don't have a sort of checklist fits all because everybody's situation is slightly different. What we do have, we have our website, movingtoportugal.org.uk, where we've got a lot of FAQs, so if we've been, let's say Mr. or Mrs. RL sends us that query by email, okay, yep. We will answer it, and then if it's, so we've had a lot of queries by email, as you can imagine. So what we do is we take the best and most relevant questions that we answer by email, and then we often put them in the FAQs, frequently asked questions, on our movingtoportugal.org.uk website. So there will be some guidance in our FAQs. But if Mr. or Mrs. RL would like to email me that specific question that she's emailed you, we can also give her a quick summary of 1, 2, 3 and who she should talk to. We'd be happy to do that.
Very good. Bruce, have you got anything from Fine and Country?
As a quick 1, 2, 3, I would say the first thing is to seek professional advice, be it from Sovereign or whoever, to make sure that you understand and that your tax situation is clear. The next step would be decide on where you want to come in Portugal, so make a trip. And then the third one will be find a good estate agent.
Right. Now I'm just going to have one more question because we've still got 400 in the room, and then we'll sum up with starting with the same order: Christina, Bruce, Shelley, and suffice for me to say thank you very much. But listen to this one, everybody. My wife and I have. This is Colin. Thank you, Colin. My wife and I have recently retired. Congratulations. And have just sold our house. Let's say that's a house in the UK. We're intending to permanently move to the Algarve. Excellent. In the next few weeks. So in the next few weeks to look for properties to buy outright. Number one, we have heard conflicting reports as to whether this is classified as essential travel. Bruce, hang on.
We understand.
Because we don't want to be homeless, spare the thought. But hopefully we'll emerge. In June 21st, we can emerge from this dreadful crisis, but there's a few months before the 21st. You never know what's up Prime Minister Johnson's sleeve, being bossed by the medical establishment. But Bruce, have a go, number one.
Yeah, so at the moment, there are no flights from the UK to Portugal at all. So, and also getting across the border, driving from France into Spain will be very complicated. So for the moment, the essential travel can be done, but from the UK, it's very difficult. But for example, we have a couple who have just moved over with a D7 visa from the United States. They flew in on Saturday to Lisbon. Had their COVID tests and drove down, sent their dog over. Then we met with them yesterday. They're here and they're here on the ground. So it depends on where you are in the world. In the UK at the moment, but also Portugal, not accepting any flights from the UK until April the 15th, which is not really that relevant because you can't fly out of the UK. Well, the previous date was May the 17th. Now they're saying the end of June. But as soon as after May the 15th, we would hope, sorry, after April 15th, we would hope that some of the airlines will lay on a few flights. And I think it's very, very likely because we still have flights coming in from Amsterdam, from Frankfurt, from other countries, from Paris. So assuming that flights from the UK do resume in mid-April, there'll be very few of them. It may be only Lisbon, as it was in the last lockdown. Maybe there'll be one or two flights a week to Faro for the moment. But if you have a reason to travel, then yes, you can. And buying a property is definitely a valid reason to travel. All you would need is an email from the estate agent.
I can add.
Anyway, Christina.
Yes, I'd just like to add to that. Bruce is quite right. At the moment, all flights, or Portugal is prohibiting direct flights from the UK to Portugal. You can fly from the UK to Portugal with a stopover through another country, because a colleague of mine's just done it. But only, obviously, if it's essential travel. So Portugal has banned all flights from the UK until the 15th of April, and it may extend it beyond that. Let's see. I should add, Bruce is quite right. We have looked at the most recent British legislation here in the UK, i.e. the legislation passed last Thursday by the British government, which covers the next 6 months of COVID legislation, emergency legislation powers here in the UK. Now, not many people are aware of this, but it is actually true that there are some exemptions for essential travel. And one of them is leaving the UK. So i.e. even under this emergency legislation, you are allowed to leave the UK for what's deemed an essential reason. An essential reason is to visit another country, to view property, to buy property, to consult a lawyer, or to anything related, or to visit your second home or holiday home to ready it for rental. Now, this is allowed under the legislation. The British government website is very clear what you need to do. You have to fill out this the official government form explaining why you are allowed to do this essential trip. And on the British government website, it also details the paperwork that you need. You essentially need an email or a letter from the real estate agent or the lawyer or whoever it is that you are going to consult. What isn't necessarily clear is how long you can stay. I don't know anyone who's tested that yet. I mean, whether you can say you've got to go for 3 weeks to look at property. But certainly people haven't really realised this yet, but you can leave the UK, even under the COVID legislation that covers the next 6 months, to purchase a property. But again, at the moment, it's a bit of a moot point because there's no flights between the UK and Portugal. But the minute the flights resume, we're expecting to publicise this quite heavily.
Now, is it the case then that moving away from a country like the UK to then buy a property in Portugal? So a lot of questions on this, ladies and gentlemen. Is that a genuine reason? Because our Judith Price has just emailed in on my WhatsApp, hello Judith, and saying the property excuse or the property reason, it's unclear, Christina, but you work within the Portuguese embassy.
You can consult the legislation online. It's very clear. It's in black and white. It says you can leave the country, leave the UK to view a property that you're thinking of buying. So, hello, Judith. I'll give you the link to the PDF on the government website, but it's all there in black and white.
Well, that's the legislation. That's coming straight from the Portuguese.
From the horse's mouth, yeah.
Ministry, from the chamber, from the ambassador's residence. And Christina represents the whole lot. Good answer. And when purchasing, Colin, thank you. When purchasing, same Colin, when purchasing property in Portugal, is there a property tax? Well, stamp duty, property tax, yes, there is. As we will be cash buyers, well, so still got your property tax, Colin. And I'm shouting at you there, Colin, because a lot of questions everyone will be thinking about this question, or a lot of people raising this question. And it's based on the value, isn't it, Bruce? So
we have a simple calculation. Sorry? No, we have a simple calculation, which is if you estimate 8% on top of the purchase price, that should cover your legal fees, stamp duty, the actual cost of the deed, and the general expenses. Now, 8% within a few points, a few decimal points, it works out pretty much on every time. So that's 8%, including all of the fees. The actual INT tax is on a sliding scale, obviously, it depends on the property. But overall, if you budget at 8%, that should do the job.
I think it's also worth mentioning there for our guests today that are coming here to buy, depending on age, of course, is that the mortgage rates in Portugal are ludicrously low. Mortgage lending in Portugal is very, as Judith and I discussed recently, and another lady who we work with closely on mortgages who's listening today, her name's Donna, and they are essentially around about 0.5, 0.6%. But one of the things to understand when considering purchasing property is that once you've bought it, if you buy it in cash, it's very difficult to then re-leverage or remortgage, because the bank system here has very plain vanilla mortgage products. So it's certainly worth investigating if you are of the right age that borrowing makes sense, because at 0.5, 0.6%, it's the cheapest cost of borrowing for property investment and property purchases. But it must be considered at outset.
Borrowing has never been cheaper. In the UK, yes. In the continental Europe, even better, Spain, Portugal. So if there's a bank able to offer a mortgage finance circa 50, 65% loan to purchase, why not? You may be into pension retirement age, you may not need so much finance. It depends case by case, but consider a mortgage. And Judith Price is a leading expert in a good friend of mine too in this business, not to be exclusively orientated towards Judith, but she is independent, and we have plenty of capability in that area. Colin, I'm going to pick on you again. These are the last questions. We have applied for a residency visa. I'm sure Christina might even know you. And are we going to go to the consulate next week? Good luck. If all paperwork approved. So how long does the visa last?
Which sort of visa?
Well, I can't get Colin to answer because he's virtual.
I expect it's a D7 if he's going to the embassy.
Yes, because I think Colin is of the retirement age. So
Shelley, I'm going to have to kick that to you, Shelley. I don't know how long the D7 visa lasts. Forgive me.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. It's 4 months. You have 4 months to come in country and then set yourself up with all the other elements that are in part of the application. So that is a 4-month validity.
And you'll get into Portugal in 4 months, I'm pretty sure of it. The being cash buyers, last pick on Colin here, being cash buyers, how long does the process take from putting an offer, Bruce, putting an offer in if it was you doing the transaction, I'm sure it'd go swimmingly well. From putting in an offer in on a house to owning it. In the UK, it's about 3 months. The rest of the world, it's at least that. What about good old Portugal?
It's how long is a piece of string? It's we have seen cases where a deal has gone from viewing to deed in less than a month. It is possible. It's possible to do it in 2 weeks. 2 weeks would be probably a record. Certainly for us, I think the record is about a month. The whole problem that a lot of properties, especially resale properties, when they're being sold, there may be some planning. Maybe someone's done an extension that's not 100% legal. Some alterations. The lawyers will do diligence, and they will pick up, and this can often hold up a deal. We try with listing properties, obviously, we try and confirm that everything is in order, but there are always often skeletons in the closet which hold the deal up. So on average, in answer to the question, I would say from acceptance of offer to final deed, 3 months would be probably the average.
And Bruce, if it's already owned by a company like a Delaware, Maltese or a UK company, if you want to do it quickly, there's the option to actually buy the company, leaving the title unchanged. And with international lawyers, and I've seen that happen within 3 months, and that's a jolly good experience. But case by case, ladies and gentlemen. Right, we've got a drifting audience now. Don't blame them. They've 331 not out at 10:30 in the morning is a fine effort, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go around the houses now, starting with Christina. Closing summary, Christina. Thank you again for representing the Chamber, the Embassy, for the nation of Portugal, incidentally. No pressure. What's your closing comments?
Well, thank you very much, Simon. Well, I'm gratified and delighted by the number of people on this seminar. I think it just demonstrates, A, the power of sovereign, B, the power of our combined databases, and C, how large the pent-up demand is and how Portugal's popularity in Europe is just rising so fast with very good reason. And I'd just like to say to everybody, you've made the right choice. Portugal is absolutely where you should be. I would be there now if I could be. Bruce is a lucky man, and so is Shelley, a very lucky woman to be living there. If you do live in the UK, obviously, if you're a UK national or an international resident of the UK, the Portuguese Chamber is more than happy to help you with your questions about moving to Portugal. We have two main websites, movingtoportugal.org.uk and also the Portuguese-chamber.org.uk. Email me at the email address here. We do regular webinars and live events of our own here in the UK. We haven't yet got the dates for the next webinars, but if you'd like to email me, we'll add you to our database, and do come along to our webinars. We tackle much more specific subjects on a smaller level. We don't normally have 500 people, but we normally have a couple of hundred, depending what we're discussing. And we are going to decide on the date of our next live event, which is a mixture of exhibition stands from our members from Portugal, our developers, our lawyers, companies like Sovereign, everybody who can help you make your move to Portugal a success. Our next live event, we hope, will be in October in central London. But if you want to join our database, just email me and we'll add you to our database, join the Moving to Portugal gang, and we'll make sure we can help you alongside all my other fellow seminar speakers here today. Thank you, Simon. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Thank you again, Christina. And Bruce, closing remarks. And one point I'd like to hit at you, Bruce, is when you turn on the television on a Sunday afternoon after watching Lewis win the Grand Prix, of course, you get this Place in the Sun programme. And the amount of times I've said to the people in the television, don't buy it for God's sake, sorry, Gauld's sake, because it's the wrong thing to do. What do you, first of all, do you watch that programme, Bruce, and what sort of lip service do you pay to it? And your closing comments, Bruce, as a person that's lived in Portugal since a young man in short trousers.
I generally, I don't watch a place in the sun. If I hear it's about the Algarve or about Portugal, then I'll make a point of tuning in. But I don't actually watch that much TV, to tell you the truth. So I'm not really so qualified to answer. Closing comments. It's been great to take part in this, and we really are expecting, as soon as the travel opens up, we're expecting to be busier than ever, and the market is very, very strong. I'm actually concerned that we may need double the amount of staff we've got to manage what's going to be thrown at us, considering the amount of pent-up interest that's there. But we'll obviously do our best. Simon, have I got time for a very, very quick question for Shelley, which I think would be of interest to anybody else who's still online?
We've got a couple of minutes left.
Very quick one, Shelley. If somebody wants to take up the D7 visa, but they make that decision once they're here on the ground, so they're here, they've come over for a couple of months as they're allowed to, they're here in the Algarve, and they say, oh, I think I'm actually going to move here. So they've bought a property and I want to take out the D7 visa. Can I initiate that process here on the ground, or do I have to do it from the embassy in my country of residence?
Well, the law says you have to do it in the embassy of your country of residence. We've had a couple of situations with Canadian clients that have managed to get assistance in Lisbon, but the law says you have to originate the application in the country of residence. And I think as travel opens up, they'll stick to that. So I think last year there were a few exceptions we saw here, but that the law says you have to do it in your country of residence, and you have to appear at the embassy physically yourself. And we recently had one gentleman who actually took his own jet into London with 4 of his family members to do it because he couldn't get any help in Lisbon. So definitely, right. I'd say that's the route. Yeah.
Well, that's a question we get thrown at us all the time, so it was a good one to put out there for the audience. So, and, yeah, so great. Thank you very much, Simon, Shelley, Christina. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And we'll have to do this again sometime, owing to not just the success, but the content that we've shared and the many questions, and still more than half of the delegates in the room still. Shelley, quick closing remarks, and I'll just sum up and bid everyone a good morning, afternoon and evening. Shelley.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks to my panel of colleagues here, and look forward to when the floodgates open, meeting all of those clients with you to provide just some of the services we've talked about today. I think the title on the invite says it all, is, make sure you talk to experts, make sure you talk to, professionals that can help guide you through through all of the different hurdles, and they can be hurdles, but we make them easier. Our team in Portugal are highly experienced. My colleague Isabel Costa and I field all the inquiries and help you with your questions, and those that we haven't answered today, because I've been seeing them coming in, we will come back to you on a personal basis. We look forward to meeting you when you do get here, and Sovereign Portugal are your go-to for the support you need.
Thank you, Shelley, and thank you, everyone. We've still got over 250 in the room, but I'd like to thank all of the speakers, Christina, Bruce, special guest speakers, Shelley, my honourable lady colleague representing Portugal for Sovereign. You've got all the contact details. There's a 4-page informational aid memoir which Miguel and Tiffany, our marketing department, will send. Keep coming with your questions. You know how to get hold of us. We'll do our best to answer every single question, because we've run out of time in answering certain other questions, but we'll get those answers to you in the coming days. Anything on the content page, from Christina to resources support, Bruce, even his experience on running a business in Portugal from a very young man, through to Shelley's residency programs, and my side, rest of world into the UK, you're in very good hands and good company. So I would like to say thank you to all 542 of you for attending. A record turnout. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for your undivided attention. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for being a wonderful audience, and we will see you again soon. Good day to you all, and here's to meeting with a lot of you when the time is relevant. Thank you again. Good day. All the best. Stay well, and cheerio for now. Bye-bye.